Hello, girls. A very good morning. Uh, as you know, in our previous class, we started with Ode to the West Wind, and we discussed the first canto of Ode to the West Wind, in which you must have noticed that the poet implores the West Wind to listen to his prayer and pay heed to his request. He describes the dual power of the west wind of being the destroyer of dead leaves and the preserver of the seeds that the west wind possesses. She drives the dead leaves over the earth and thus proves to be a great destroyer. She, at the same time, as you know, that the west wind has been personified, so that is why we are mentioning it as she. So she at the same time drives the seeds with her current and buries them under the ground, where they lie dormant throughout the winter. Her sister, that is spring, the west wind, revives these seeds by making them sprout into flowering plants in spring. She is therefore a great preserver. So in now we are going to do another two cantos of Ode to the West Wind. So in the second canto that is there, the poet describes the effect of the west wind over the sky. Her swift current drives the clouds over the blue sky, and the locks of the approaching storm, spread on the blue sky, look like the brilliant bright hair standing erect from the head of some fierce maid. The west wind is tolling the funeral song of the dying year. The dense, dark vapors of the cloud will construct the grave of the dying year, and the black night will prove the dome over its grave. So, this was the basic introduction that is there in your second canto. So let us begin with the second canto. And your poet says, "Thou on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose cloud like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean." So what is happening here? Again, the speaker addresses the west wind as a person, calling it as one who will loose clouds and shake the leaves of the boughs of heaven and ocean. This reads almost like a plasm, as if the speaker is praising the wind of its power. So, though on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, commotion is a disturbance that is there, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed. So, a simile has been used, and your loose clouds are compared to the rotten leaves which fall from the trees, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. And he imagines a tree, whose branches of a tree whose roots are in the ocean and branches are in the sky. So what is he referring to? He is referring to characterizing it in personification form, and he says what is there? A tree is there, and whose roots are where? In the ocean, and the branches of the trees are reaching up to the sky. And what are the leaves of that trees? The loose clouds are the leaves of that tree. So as the leaves fall from the tree one by one, similarly it seems as if the loose clouds that are there are shedding one after the another. So angels of rain and lightning there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of a fierce maid. So of some fierce maid. So what is happening here? The speaker refers to the wind as a spiritual being more powerful than angels, for the angels of rain and lightning are described as being spread on the blue surface of the wind. He then describes these angels as being like the bright hair of on the head of a even greater being. So what is he trying to say? So angels of rain and lightning. So clouds are the messengers of rain and lightning. So as you know that if there are black clouds, so you know that it is going to rain. So the angels, that is why they've been compared to the angels, that is the messengers of rain and lightning. There are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge. Surge is the waves of air, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce maid, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith's height, the locks of the approaching storm. Thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of the vast scapula, vaulted in with all thy congregated might. So, what is he trying to say? So, in this stanza of the particular poem Ode to the West Wind, the speaker compares the wind to a fierce maid. So, what is a maid? So it's a female follower of the god of wine whose name is Bacchus. Maenad is a female follower of god of wine Bacchus. So in this stanza, Your the speaker compares the west wind to a fierce maid or the spiritual being that used to be found around the Greek god Dionysus. Remember that this is the being that was so described as having hair like angels. Thus, the wind is described as being like God with angels of hair. So, these angels of rain and lightning reveal that storm is on the way. So, what is happening here? So, your clouds are there, and what color clouds are there? So, they are black clouds, and the black clouds that are scattered among the sky, so it seems as if that they are hair of this fierce, this female follover of Dionysus, the Greek god or the god of wine, Bacchus. And they are telling what? So even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith height. So what is horizon? Horizon is, and the zenith height is the highest point that is there in the sky, and horizon is where your earth and sky seems to meet. So from one particular point to the highest point in the sky, what is there? The black clouds are there, and they are being compared to what? They have been compared to locks. Locks is hair of the approaching storm. So what is happening? A storm is about to come. So after that, thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast scapular, vaulted with all thy congregated might. So speaker then explains the storm approaching is the impending doom of the dying year. The use of scapular is interesting too, since this refers to a small room, a monument in which a person is buried, typically Christian origin. To refer to something like this, cloud could suggest that Shelley wants to trap and contain all the power of nature inside the tomb for it to burst open in the stanza 5. So, you know, you're going to get a reference of this in stanza 5. As well as this, a scapular is an isolating way of being buried, which could indicate that Shelley wants to move away from all his miseries and finally be one with nature. So, what is happening here? So, as I said that they are talking about that a storm is approaching because there are black clouds, and it has been compared to the hair of a fierce maid. So, thou dirge. Dirge is the lament for the dead of the dying year. So, of the dying year is that the year is coming to an end, to which this closing night. So, the darkness of the closing night is because there are dark clouds, and obviously there is night time. So, what is happening is it's a double dark here. So, the darkness of the night will be the dome of a vast scapula. Scapular is the tomb. So, it's serving as the tomb. And then he says, vaulted with all thy congregated might of vapors, from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Oh, here. So, the speaker then describes the wind as a bringer of death. He has already described it as a destroyer. Here he described it as one who brings black rain and fire and hail. So what is hailstorm? Hailstorm is when you have, you know, snow that is falling down. So black rain is, again, black is the symbol of death. So black rain, lightning is there, and hailstorm is there. So poet once again calls the west wind to listen to him. To end this canto, the speaker again appeals to the west wind, begging that it would hear him. So what is happening? So vaulted with all thy congregated might. Congregated might is that the clouds collecting will serve as an arched roof of the tomb, which will be erected over the dead body of vapors. What is vapors? From whose solid atmosphere? So solid, seemingly vapors of cloud in the sky will fall. So as you know that, you know, rain happens because of the condensation, evaporation, and then condensation. So your water is being evaporated into the sky, and then it condenses there, and it, you know, collects into the sky. And because of the collection of the water that is there, the droplets that is there, your clouds become heavy, and then you started to have rain. So what is happening is that what is he trying to talk about? That your year is coming to an end, and this is the last night of the year. And what is happening? So these black clouds have created a tomb, a grave for your dying year, and vapors from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. So black rain is, of course, is because it's night time, so it's talking about that. Fire is lightning, and hail is for hailstorm will burst here. So as I said, to end this canto, the speaker again appeals to the wind, begging that it would hear him. So he's requesting the west wind to listen to him. So this is your second canto. As I said that he is talking about multiple things that is here. What is he trying to talk about? If I repeat that, so in this stanza, as I said, the poet tells us how the west wind blows from the sky to the earth. He expresses his idea by presenting a picture which is somewhat vague and hazy. He compares the cloud which float on the surface of the wind to the leaves which fall on the earth. And we are imagining that there is a vast tree whose roots are in the ocean and whose branches are high up in the sky, and from the branches of this tree fall clouds in the same way as rotten leaves fall from an ordinary tree. These clouds from that tree fall on the surface of the west wind, just as rotten leaves fall from a tree on the earth below. Further, your poet says that these clouds fall on the surface of the west wind when there is unrest or tumult. Tumult is a kind of a confusion, commotion in the high sky. So when the sky shows stormy conditions, these clouds are messengers of rain and lightning. Then your poet then represents the picture of a storm that is about to blow. He says that the black hair of the storm is spread on the blue waves of the surface of the west wind. The hair of the storm covers the surface of the west wind all the way from horizon to the highest point in the sky. The hair on the storm spread in this way is just like the disordered hair of a terrible female worshipper of the vine god Bacchus, who moved about in great intoxication with their long locks flowing in the air. What the poet means is that his eyes travel from the horizon to the highest point of the sky above. The appearance of the sky indicates that the storm is blowing. Then your poet presents a third picture. He imagines the whistling sound of the west wind to the dirge of the dying ear. So as I told you, that dirge is a mourning on a dead person. So but who's dying? The ear is dying. So the ear is dying. The west wind is the funeral song over the death of the ear. A huge tomb is also being erected over the dead ear. The darkness of the night, which is spreading over the earth, will serve as the dome of that tomb. The dense mass of the clouds will form the ceiling of the vast grave. From those dense clouds in the sky forming the ceiling, there will be fall, rain, lightning, and hail upon the earth. And in the end, the poet appeals to the west wind to hear his prayer. So this was your second canto. In the third canto, what your poet is trying to talk about is, so in the third canto, the west wind awakens the Mediterranean Sea from his summer sleep. The spirit of the sea observes the old Roman palaces and towers, and he sees them refracted from the bright surface of the sea. Then the west wind creates deep valleys through the waves of the Atlantic, and the trees at the bed of the ocean shed their leaves out of fear when they tremble to hear her terrible voice. So this was the general introduction. Now we're going to go on with the lines that are there in your poem. So thou who didst waken from his summer dreams, the blue Mediterranean, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline stream. To begin with this canto, the speaker describes the wind as having woken up the Mediterranean Sea from a whole summer of peaceful rest. The sea here is also personified. So Mediterranean Sea is being personified, and west wind has done what? West wind has awakened the sea, which seems to have been sleeping and dreaming in the summer, where he lay lulled by the coil of his crystalline stream. So it seems as if you lay asleep under the soothing influence of the pleasant sound of the bright river falling into water. So crystalline stream is the bright river which falls into water. Besides the Pumice Isle in Bays Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers, so sweet the sense feigns picturing them, thou for whose path the Atlantic level powers. So with this stanza, the speaker simply implies that the sea was dreaming of the old days of palaces and towers, and he was quivering at the memory of an intenser day. The speaker continues to describe the sea's dreams as being of slower days. when everything was overgrown with blue moss and flowers. Then he hints that something is about to change when he mentions to Atlantic power. So what is happening here? Beside a pumice is lava. So he's talking about an island which is made up of lava, which is not far from Naples in Bay's Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers. So it seems as if, what is happening here is the reflection of those palaces and towers is there on water, is there on Mediterranean Sea, and it's because he has said earlier that it seems as if your Mediterranean Sea is dreaming. Similarly, they are also dreaming in sleep, which are there, the old palaces and towers, and quivering. Quivering is trembling in the bright, clear light of the ocean, all overgrown with. So, overgrown is where growing with osier, moss, and flowers. So sweet the sense feigns picturing them, thou for whose path the Atlantic level powers. So such overpowering sweet smell is there that the very thought of them make us feel drowsy. So make us feel drowsy is he's talking about the readers and the speaker himself, that the poet himself. He says the ambience here is so dreamy. It's because everything seems to be dreaming. So it is making you what? It is making you feel drowsy. So thou whose path the Atlantic level powers cleave themselves into chasm, while far below the sea blooms and the oozy woods, which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice, as suddenly grow grey with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves, oh, here. So this stanza is in reference to the sea's reaction to the power of the wind. At first sign of the strong wind, the sea seems to cleave into chasm. Cleave is to cut down, to become in two parts, into chasm, and grow grey with fear as they tremble at the power of the wind. Again, this stanza reflects a spasmodic worship of God, so mighty that nature itself trembles in its sight. So what is happening? So as I said in this previous section, so thou from whose path the Atlantic level powers cleave themselves into chasm. Cleave is to cut into two pieces, and chasm are the hollows. While far below, what is happening? While far below, the sea blooms and the oozy wood. So a lot of plants are growing at the bottom of the sea. So I think you must have heard of the flora and the fauna. So there are different plants that grow underwater. So the sea blooms and the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage. Foliage is the plants and sapless is something which is juiceless or lifeless of the ocean, know thy voice. Thy is here for the west wind. Thy is archaic English and it says your voice. So they grow with fear and start trembling and shed their leaves, and suddenly grow grey with fear and tremble. Tremble is to shiver to commote, and despoil. Despoil is to shed their leaves themselves. Oh, here. So again, in all the three cantos, he's asking the west wind to listen to him, listen to his prayers, and talking about the characteristics of it. So what is happening? So thou who desist, as I said, so these lines from the third stanza of the poem, in these lines the poet describes the west wind on the sea agitating the waves. The poet describes the change wrought by the wind on the sea surface. And what is the sea? The Mediterranean and the Atlantic Sea. The poet personifies the Mediterranean Sea. He regards it as a living being who had gone to sleep and who had been dreaming throughout summer, till in autumn the west wind awakened him from sleep and interrupted his dream. The poet says that the west wind disturbed the Mediterranean in his sleep. During summer the Mediterranean, soothed by the pleasant sound of bright rivers which fell into his waters, and gone to sleep near an island made of lava in Bay's Bay, not far from Naples, near an island made of lava. So in his sleep the Mediterranean has dreams. From this dreamful sleep the Mediterranean was aroused by the violence of the west wind. In his sleep the Mediterranean dreamt of old palaces and towers, of the cities buried under the sea during earthquakes and volcanic eruptions, slightly trembling in the bright and clear light of the ocean below the surface. On these palaces and towers, moss of such overpowering sweetness grow that the very thought of them comes laden with such a heavy perfume that the sense of smell faints. So the poet describes the effect of the west wind on the Atlantic Ocean. He says that when the west wind blows on the Atlantic, its water is agitated. So what is, as it says, thou on whose path the Atlantic level powers cleave themselves into chars. So what is happening? So the level surface of the Atlantic Ocean becomes furrowed and many channels to enable the wind to rush along them. Before the west wind blew, the surface of the Atlantic Ocean was level, but now it would seem as if your Atlantic waters break apart to form path for the west wind to tread, as if the west wind were an awesome king. Then your poet describes the effects on the west wind on the vegetation at the bottom of the Atlantic. The plants at the bottom of the ocean are damp, but they have no sap in them. Sapless is juiceless, no sap in them, they are dry. So when the west wind begins to blow, those plants at once become aware of its arrival. They began to tremble with fear and become grey leaved out of fear and shed their leaves. Just as in autumn the trees on the earth shed their leaves, similarly the plants at the bottom of the ocean also shed their leaves, and the plants stand in great terror of the wind. Here also, Shelley has expressed the well-known scientific fact that the vegetation below the sea surface follow the seasonal changes on the earth. In autumn season, as the leaves of the tree land begin to fall, the same process is repeated among the sea as well. So this is, the explanation for the two cantos, furthermore cantos of Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. I hope it is clear to you. I hope you have understood this. But as I was saying in all my classes, if you have any problem, any query, you can post your queries on Google Classroom. So this is all for today. For our next class, we'll finish up with this poem with the remaining two cantos. Thank you so much, girls. Have a nice day. Stay safe and stay indoors. Thank you so much.